Welcome to the Project Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Gorey, mom of a sweet baby girl and an ever-evolving entrepreneur. On this show, we will explore the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. We will share stories of moms just like you and me with the goal of fostering community and comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our experiences. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to ensure you get all the updated episodes and releases. Welcome to today's episode of the Project Mom Podcast. Today, I am chatting with Elliott. She is a mom, a graphic designer, and owner of Elliott Mountain Studio, as well as art director, and is based out of Southwest Washington. So Hillary, welcome. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
I'm so excited and so appreciative because it's always helpful for other women listening to hear more and more of our stories. And I really have found that this project has allowed me to connect with a lot of women who have pursued different types of careers. And personally, I've always had some sort of calling to kind of a more creative channel in some capacity. So this is personally appealing to me. So I'm selfishly very excited to hear more about what you do. But I also find that there's, at least in the world that I've walked in, quite a bit of judgment around kind of creative channels as careers. And for me, it was always safety and security came from financial means, and financial means did not come from the creatives. So I'm really looking forward to jumping in and debunking some of these narratives and kind of sharing your journey as a matter of fact and hearing more about kind of what you do as a graphic designer, what you do as an art director, and how you kind of weave that in with your motherhood journey. So with that, let's get started. I would love if we could start off and have you share with us a little bit about both journeys, your business journey, how you became an entrepreneur, as well as your motherhood journey. Where did they intersect and how do they play off one another?
Yeah, so I went to college in San Francisco for graphic design, and I always had freelance clients even while I was in college. And so I kind of started a little bit of an entrepreneur journey there. And when I graduated, I moved to Southern California and I got my first kind of full-time design job. And I kind of dropped off from the entrepreneur side for a few years. And then when I moved up to Southwest Washington with my now husband, he was my boyfriend, I kind of jumped into it again. We moved to his hometown of Kalama, Washington. And it's a very vibrant small town. And I really wanted to connect with other women entrepreneurs in the area. And so I was able to do that through my business, Elliott Mountain Studio, by helping other women entrepreneurs with their branding. My business really took off in the pandemic. I was stuck at home with a newborn, and I wasn't feeling a lot of connection with people. And so I really found connection with especially other ladies by helping them with their branding while being stuck at home with a newborn.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said for like community in this time in our lives of like, how do we, find what it is that motivates us and gives us joy. And some of that comes from helping others who are in similar stages. And I'd love to touch a little bit on this kind of experience for you in the middle of the pandemic. I'm assuming a new mom at the time, right? You have this newborn at home. You're, trying to navigate the day-to-day in like world crisis. And then how did you find the time or the support to find the time to kind of navigate both identities for yourself, being a newborn mom and having this desire to start a business or could get your business to thrive since it was already functioning?
Yeah, I knew even when I got pregnant, I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. It's very difficult. And even though I'm kind of an introvert, I like to recharge by myself, but I do like getting out of the house and going to work and being creative. And so I was counting down the days on my maternity leave to return back to the office. And then I was back about 3 weeks and then the pandemic started and I got sent home. It was pretty much 2 years to work from home. My husband was working, so I strapped my baby to my chest pretty much, and I worked through the day through my art director job. And it was very difficult. I suffered with postpartum depression. And I think something that really pulled me out of it was pouring into my business and feeling like I was helping other people also by creating like authentic branding for their businesses and really empowering them to lift their businesses up through branding and marketing. And I really think that helped pull me out of postpartum depression as well. Now my husband is a stay-at-home dad. And so I find I have a ton more time because he was always a strong support, but now he has more time. So I'm not necessarily the primary parent anymore. He is. And so that was a transition as well. But it also has given me a lot more time and energy to pour into my business and my full-time job and being a mom.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's so many things I want to touch on with you. One of them being this transition and kind of the journey that you and your husband went on to kind of come to the common agreement that he would become a full-time stay-at-home dad and you would continue to give yourself the support that you needed to be the best version of you, which is to go back to work and give a lot of your energy to that. So can you share with us just a little bit about the journey and the path that led you guys as a couple here to this point?
Sure. So he was in the military when we first started dating, and he actually got some injuries while he was in the military, and they have compounded throughout the last 10 years. And so he's not able to work anymore due to back pain. And so it kind of made the decision for us because he was working in a very like physical job and he was not able to do that anymore. And so I feel that because I had my business already running, it was an easy transition and an easy decision to make to tell him just to stop working and to really work on healing his body and becoming a stay-at-home dad. Honestly, I feel like this is probably where we were meant to be in the beginning, and that the world just kind of worked out so that he can be home with our son and that I can still have a job that I love. It's a blessing to have a job you love going to. Not everyone has that. And so it kind of just made sense that I could keep working the job I love and then he gets to stay home with our little guy.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, I think, the way that the universe plays itself out, right? In terms of there's perhaps these thoughts that you said you kind of feel like maybe that's where you were meant to be from the beginning, but there are all of these other maybe expectations or assumptions or, stereotypes that we were playing into that kind of prevented that from happening at the get-go. And I agree, it's always quite interesting the way that the universe plays its hand and gets you to where you're meant to be. So it is quite remarkable when you think about it that way. In terms of, at this point, the experience that you have now kind of not being maybe the primary parent or like a full-time caregiver, I mean, like, did you find that some different beliefs or narratives or stories came up for you in that transition that perhaps you needed to be doing more? And how did you navigate some of that assumption that you needed to be doing it a little bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, mom guilt is real. And we also were together 24/7 for so long while I was working from home. And so we were highly connected, my child and I. And I actually think it's good for him to be away from me a little bit more. He's definitely a lot needier when I'm around. And I feel like he's become a more independent child without me being around him 24/7.
For sure. I think I love what you said too about like the neediness or the connection that you had with your child and the experiences that he's having now that you're not home all of the time, or there is some level of separation, because there's definitely something to be said for our kids having the experiences that they're meant to and being able to then give him the opportunities to try something a little bit different or not, rely on you all the time or have to communicate differently is quite beautiful when you evaluate it that way. I mean, it's interesting because I am a full-time stay-at-home mom, and my husband and I play interesting roles in the sense that when he's home, she has to be with him. She's a daddy's girl beyond belief. And it's interesting because I'm like, but don't you want to see, like, shouldn't you love me more because we're together all the time? So it's interesting. It's like, am I not doing enough?
Yeah, I definitely think that he's been way more independent, an independent child, and definitely less whiny. It's hard because I've struggled with what do I do that makes him that way? Because my husband says it's like as soon as I get home from work, he like will cry, but he hasn't cried like, all day. And so I kind of struggle with that now, being like, do I enable his behavior? And so I think it's just healthy for both of us to have time away from each other during the day too.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, right, it's like there's this level of guilt that you have. It's like, am I doing something to create behavior that I don't want to promote in him, right? What am I doing that's causing this? But then it's also like you're giving yourself a chance to take some time away and actually have some clarity on like what you need so that when you do go home and he's extra needy or needs something a little bit more from you that he doesn't want to get from your husband, you have some of that patience to give it back to him and hold some space for whatever it is that he needs from you in that moment.
Definitely. It was a hard balance. Like when we were together all day long and he whined all day long, like I couldn't give my full attention to him all day. But now that, we have the time apart and we have just like kind of the evenings and the weekends, like he gets 100% of my attention. I'm not on my phone, and so I feel like we even have like a deeper connection now because he gets my full attention all the time when we are together.
Yeah, I love that. I think like to highlight the deeper connection without having to kind of beat yourself up for not being there all the time or, doing something a little bit differently for yourself or honoring yourself is really beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about your journey with him as a newborn and kind of the support system that you kind of generated for yourself, if you did, right, around the challenges that you faced with your, postpartum depression and figuring out kind of how to get yourself out of that. I'd love to share a little bit about that if you're comfortable.
I would love to. I have never been a lady that has baby fever. My husband on our first date said, well, I want to have kids. So if you don't, we'll just stay friends. And then I was like, yeah, totally. I want kids. We were 22. And then we got married, 6 years later. And the decision was when I turned 30, we would have a child. And so that was the catalyst of us having Holden. I am more analytical. I don't jump into things. And so I don't think I ever would have, if he wasn't so gung-ho, taken the jump into motherhood. Of course, I'm so happy I did. I love Holden more than anything. So that was kind of the catalyst of us having our first child. We have family nearby, which I don't know how people can have children without family nearby. My in-laws live a few miles away. My parents live 20 minutes away. So we have a full, strong support system around us. I had a hard time utilizing and asking for help. That's something I never had to do in my life before. And so really leaning on my support system and using them, even though we have a strong one, was a hurdle I had to get over. And I do have some friends that had children way before me in their early 20s. And so I had people I can call when I was struggling to get, insight, advice, vent to when days were hard. And then I think actually asking for help with my postpartum depression with a doctor was another hurdle. So actually just like letting go of control was hard for me as a new mom, I think, because you can't control when they sleep or when they want to eat. And so, yeah, that's been a big journey for me the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on such an important piece of the puzzle of like, yes, having help, right? There's something to be said for having family nearby and creating a community that can support you through these times, but it's being able to take a step back and receive the help that I think is the biggest challenge for a lot of us, to say, okay, you may do it a little bit differently than I would, but I'm relinquishing control and allowing you to help me because I need it. And just taking some of that stigma off.
Totally. And vulnerability, being like, I need help. I felt like, well, I should be able to do this. Like, I wanted to be a mom, I got myself in this situation almost, but giving birth is a traumatic experience and you're healing, and there's a lot of emotions and hormones. Breastfeeding is very hard. And so really just being like, I need a nap, or like, I need someone to come hold the baby for me for a bit. Those seemed like the easy things that you should be able to do and not ask for help for. So it was hard for me to just be like, no, actually, I need an hour to myself today. Can you come over and help?
Yeah, it's interesting because you had said something that really resonates with me, of the piece of, I almost chose this, right? So I should just suck it up and do what I've set out to do, right? This was a choice I made. And it's interesting because I very much felt that. That was a huge part of the narrative in my kind of first year of motherhood, in this early stage of motherhood. And I felt like I hit a point where I just needed to accept how much this sucked because I chose this. This is where we're at. So it's truly traumatic to think about it. But when you also think about, there's a lot of awareness right now coming to the surface collectively, I think, around the overturning of Roe v. Wade and this narrative that women made this choice, that they're moms, they should, they made choice to get pregnant, they should keep, all of these narratives are coming up for the collective. And it's interesting because as more light gets shed on this overarching narrative that is not at all favorable to women, right? It's like you look at it now and you're like, holy crap, I've been brainwashed. It feels to me like that in an extent, right? It's like I've been succumbing to a narrative that does not need to be true for me. And it does not need to be this hard. And it does not need to be, I do not need to suffer because of a choice that was made. We can always make a different choice. So that really resonates with me in terms of what you experienced.
Also, getting pregnant is a blessing. And I am fully aware that people would pray and hope and they would do anything to be able to get pregnant and have a baby. And so I always felt like I was ungrateful for the blessing that was given to me if I didn't power through. Or honestly, I felt so much guilt about not loving having a baby. And honestly, now that I know it wasn't just me, it was my postpartum depression. You can't always help that. But yeah, I felt like I was an a-hole because I was being ungrateful for this blessing. And so that was like a big struggle too, was that I was just like, I would put a smile on my face and be like, oh, it's lovely. I haven't slept in 4 days. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Everything's okay. My eyes are pried open. It's fine. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about the kind of evolution out of your postpartum depression. So coming to, you came to this recognition that you needed some help from your doctor. You reached out, you made that connection. What did that journey look like for you as you climbed out?
Yeah, it took a long time. I think my son was 9 months old. I powered through for way too long. I do think the pandemic probably, it was just hard to get doctor's appointments. I had emailed 4 doctors asking for help and they wouldn't make appointments with me. So it took a while, and for me to just get the strength to ask for help, And so finally I was able to talk to a doctor. I was put on medication, and I also started asking for help more, just realizing I can't be a good mom when I'm trying to do everything, and that I would be a better mom if I, asked for help. And so coming to that realization, and I feel like also just the medicine helped, because your brain isn't going to be rational when it's struggling. And so I think the first step definitely was the medication, and then really just leaning on my support system and letting go of the narrative I had wove into my life that I had to do everything. and letting them help definitely helped me out a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it is truly incredible. I mean, when you just shared that difficulty it was to even get help, like a part of me hits like this part, this like sense of anger. I like see that situation. I'm like, oh my God, it took everything you had to ask for help and you had to ask for help 4 times. Like it is alarming and frustrating.
Yeah, I was told it was situational because of the pandemic, or it was situational because I just had a baby, but that it would get better. I also, to get TMI, I had a pretty bad tear when I gave birth. And even just telling people I was in pain and trying to get help, I went to probably 6 doctor's appointments, even up to like a year after giving birth, and was just like, I don't feel like I should be in pain, you know? And luckily, I found a lovely pelvic physical therapist who was like, no, we believe you're in pain and that we can help you and that you don't have to live your life this way. And so that's also something I tell new moms, like take care of your physical body too. You've been through something crazy, like you grew a human and then you pushed the human out, or they cut it open and took the human out. Like, I think that also is hard after giving birth because you're supposed to just kind of like care for the baby now, and you immediately push yourself to the side while you're healing.
Yeah, it is really alarming. I think when we look back on our individual experiences, how sometimes similar they can be in the challenges of just being heard. I do know, at least from personal experience too, on my end, right, I had a pretty bad tear as well after the birth of my daughter. And I, for like a couple weeks, was like, okay, like it is what it is. It is what it is. It should be getting better. And I went into my 6-week appointment and the doctor was like, oh no, you should have come to me sooner. I was like, I don't know. No one ever told me like when it wasn't supposed to hurt anymore. I was like, I just assumed I was supposed to be sore and uncomfortable for a while. Turns out I had an infection that I was like fighting physically for weeks. And it's alarming. And then you're absolutely correct, right? It's like you are physically trying to heal your body, keep a newborn alive. You're trying to like get rid of all the pressure of trying to figure out how to breastfeed. Breastfeeding did not work for me. I think because of the infection and the stress on my body, I was not able to produce anything to feed my child. So there was like that guilt that I've failed her and I'm doing everything wrong. But when it comes down to them, if I was able to get in sooner, could the narrative changed a little bit? If I could have gotten the help, if somebody heard me, if somebody, gave me some sort of direction, could this have looked a little bit different?
Definitely. Actually, this kind of touches on like my full-time job. And after I became a mom and after advocating for myself, I got promoted from just being like a senior graphic designer because I really wanted to advocate for the other designers on my team and make the job easier for them and them have more job satisfaction. And so I do feel like becoming a mom, I felt empowered after advocating for myself. And that has bled over into my professional life too. I got that mom energy, I come into work and I feel like I can help others out because I
Yeah.
got that mom energy.
I love that. I love that. So tell us a little bit more about your work in this empowerment, because I think there's so much to be learned from one identity or one facet of our lives that can absolutely bleed into a confidence or a clarity or motivation in the other facets of our lives. So tell us a little bit more about how you empower your clients, what your work looked like in terms of empowering your team. Share a little bit more with us about that. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah. So in my business, I really like to get to know my clients, get to know what their business goals are, their ideal clients. And then we kind of work to create branding that feels authentic to them, they're excited to use. And I also try to make it not dummy proof, but you feel so confident with the branding and I create like Canva templates for you that you can really empower yourself and your business by using your branding and using it as a voice for yourself and your business. And at work, I feel like I have tried to help everyone's job satisfaction and to be an advocate for them. I've helped everyone's wages be lifted. I've been a voice to them to help reach their own career goals. And even if that is to move on from the company, I'm always happy to give them a reference, help out with their portfolio, but really just it's hard being a woman in the workforce because I feel like you are already set up to make less. You need to really be an advocate for yourself to learn how to negotiate and to set boundaries, especially when you have a child at home. You can't be working all of the time. And so having a good work-life balance, I feel like I've really been able to help everyone on the team achieve that, have an open line of communication, and know that I'm there to help them reach their career goals too, not just be their boss.
Yeah. That's really incredible. And I think, unfortunately, quite rare in a lot of workplace environments to have somebody who's willing to be that advocate and that promoter for her team and colleagues, and really getting that working is just one part of our lives, that there are a lot of goals and motivations that we have that live kind of outside of that realm. I wonder what advice you may have for someone who's listening who is feeling perhaps that they don't have that. I think there's a lot of women in the workplace who see women in higher management roles who perhaps are a little bit more cutthroat than they perhaps would have hoped, or less motivating or supportive than they would have hoped for. So what advice do you have for somebody who's in the workplace or is, running a business and is trying to be their own best advocate, but kind of feels as though they're isolated in that?
I think find a community of women, like-minded women that you can lean on and they can help build you up too. I do think it's not something you need to do by yourself. And also, it's a hard step to take to make the meeting with your boss to ask for a raise. But if you have your community of women that can help build you up, you can, get pumped up before you go into the meeting, but you have to be the one to make the meeting. So you have to strive to better yourself and to advocate for yourself. But if you have a strong community, they help lift you up to get there, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, that's such an important piece of the puzzle of if you don't have that, how do you create it? How do you generate that for yourself to give yourself the confidence that you need until you believe it internally? I think that's such a huge piece of the puzzle. So what does your community look like right now? So I know from a support perspective, you have your family's nearby and help in raising your son and all of that. But from perhaps an entrepreneurial perspective or a workplace perspective, what does your community look like to boost you up?
Yeah, I have some very close friends that I've met through the workforce, through past jobs that I strive to stay in touch with them. And they're lovely ladies. Some of them have decided to be childless, but that they're still there. I think and then some of my friends have kids. They're all kind of different journeys that they're leading, but I do feel like we all strive to lift each other up. And I think that kind of is important. Even though you've chosen different paths in life, you can still have a strong connection with someone. Because I know I struggled with finding quote, mom friends after having my son. And I realized I didn't necessarily need mom friends, just you need strong friends that are there for you no matter what.
Yeah, I love that. I think that distinction is so impactful, right? I think about my experience. I was one of the first of my really close friends to have kids, and it felt very isolating, right? And you kind of feel like you're in this boat all alone. You don't know who to ask, these questions in the middle of the night. But you do also have the ability to find women who are strong in their discernment of you are worthy or you are capable. You can absolutely do this. You should show up for yourself, advocate for yourself because you are worthy of that. So just having women who are strong enough in that discernment really makes all of the difference.
I also have taken this step to if relationships aren't serving me and that they aren't feeling like, they're lifting me up, and that it's kind of like draining to just like only put into that relationship what you are going to get out of. And so, I'm still friendly with people. I'm still friends with them, but I know and have really prayed about and learned a lot to find friends that serve me and that are bringing positivity to my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, what does some of your downtime look like? Your self-care time, your self-love time, your quiet time? Like, what does that look like for you? How do you recharge when you are working and running a business and coming home and being a mom and a wife and a friend? How do you recharge yourself? What does that time look like for you?
Yeah. So I'm a creative. And so making things, I find a lot of joy in that. So I knit, I crochet, I started doing pottery. I'm even selling my pottery at like a local farmer's market, just kind of creating things, not without a purpose, but with designing, I feel like I always have like an end goal, and sometimes I lost the joy of just creating art to create art to really feed my soul. And so I've gotten back into that. And that's what I love doing. It also is like alone time because I'm an introvert.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's interesting. So I read on, I think it was on your website, you shared a little bit about your history. And I think your parents are also in this creative space. I think one of your parents is a photographer. So there's definitely some creative.
Yeah. My dad was a forester for 43 years. And so he chose a job that would like let him be out in the woods all the time. And so he chose a job that was really feeding his soul. And my mom was a bookkeeper, but she's extremely crafty. She was a stay-at-home mom for like the first 8 years of my life. And so um, I was always doing crafts and art. And yeah, my dad's an amazing photographer. I'm lucky as a creative that I had parents that realized the importance of having a job that you love and that they really allowed me to dream big and go to art school, but still pushed me to choose a degree, a safer degree, such as graphic design. We call it like the business degree of the art world because you can always fall back on it and you can really find your own niche in the workforce with a graphic design degree. And so, yes, very lucky from having parents that really supported my creative dreaming.
Yeah. And I love what you said too around the importance of finding a job that you love, because I think there's something to be said for us as moms who are going to take the time to do something away from child caring and caregiving and being that like, full-time stay-at-home mom or kind of what that role looks like. There's a lot to be navigated through in terms of the guilt that comes up for that. So to take time away from our kid, it's important that it does nourish our soul. But I think there's also something to be said for working while you're also going down a path to find what does feed your soul. So they don't necessarily have to be one and the same right away, but to be able to work to then run a business on the side that feeds your soul, to then give you the time to craft and find those things that bring you joy is so important. And I think sometimes we get lost in that. We have to be either giving all of the time, making money, being a financial provider, or being a childcare provider. There's sometimes nothing in between.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey too in my design career. I mean, I definitely had corporate jobs that were high visibility. I had big name clients, but I didn't enjoy it. And so I definitely invested my 20s to finding a job that I really loved going to. And the company I work for is amazing. I've worked there 6 years and I feel like I wouldn't have felt as confident to become a mom if I didn't have that workplace that was, accepting of, I can't imagine working like as a lawyer or other kind of male dominated fields where pumping at work, would be difficult. I definitely felt very confident becoming a mom because of the job that I do have. And my past jobs, if I would have stuck with them just for the money or for, visibility or high name clients, I would not have felt as confident to become a mom, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's definitely something to be said for like taking a pause and seeing what is my motivation here. Is it just for this high name recognition because I should be doing it or because it makes me a lot of money? Because I think ultimately in the long run, it's going to come slapping you in the face. It's going to come full circle and it's going to show you that perhaps that's not the path that you're meant to be on. So I do really appreciate your honesty around that. And I think there's something to be said for that. So, in terms of, I'm going to just switch really quickly. So, in terms of your business that you have where you work with your clients on their branding and building up their confidence and their empowerment to kind of leverage and put themselves out there, how do you balance working, having this business, and being a mom? Like, what does your day look like?
So I'm very lucky. My job is flexible. And so we are able to choose to work 4 10-hour days and you can set your own hours. And so I choose to work 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday at my full-time job. And so I'm home usually by 4. I have, a few hours to hang out with my son and my husband, give them my full attention. And then my son goes to bed at 7. And then I kind of use that time to run my business or to, self-care. I definitely have learned how many clients I can take on at a time. So I try to work 10 to 15 hours max. 10 is ideal because I have all day Fridays off. So then I can do nap time on the weekends and then like 2 evenings a week of working. And I have set strong boundaries between my full-time job and strong boundaries on myself with taking on clients. Sometimes it's very exciting. I mean, I want to work with all of the lovely women entrepreneurs, but I've learned to definitely set a stricter schedule on that so that I'm still able to enjoy it. Because if I have taken on too much and then it takes the enjoyment out of it, and that's kind of defeating the purpose of my business.
Yes. I mean, it is so true. It's like, unfortunately, sometimes we have to learn the hard way which boundaries need to be set in order for us to thrive and enjoy the tasks that we're taking on and the hobbies and the businesses that we want to like fill our time with. So perhaps maybe walk us through a little bit in terms of what some of these boundaries look like and how did you discern which ones needed to be set? And how do you handle when ultimately they do get crossed? Because boundaries are definitely going to get crossed.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten better at pushing back. And usually, if a boundary got crossed, I would just like let it get knocked down and that would get run right over, you know? And so, really keeping an eye on being mindful of how I'm spending my time and how I want to spend my time, and mindful of when I get burnt out. Because when I get burnt out, especially as a creative, you can't be creative if you're not like investing in yourself as well. And so, yes, I only take on one client at a time. I have a wait list if needed, or if they need the job done right away, I have other creative ladies that I can refer them out to. And it's also an ego thing because you don't want to turn away business, but knowing that like if they really want to work with you and it's meant to be, that they will, wait a month until your availability opens up. And so I am a big scheduler. I have a work calendar that my day is scheduled out for. I have business calendar. All of my evenings and time are blocked off for my design work and my clients. And yeah, it's hard when a timeline for a project doesn't go right because then sometimes my projects overlap. If one like goes late, but I really need to start the next one with another client. Those are the times where it's a little more difficult. But yeah, just having like a schedule has helped out a lot.
Yeah, I bet. I also feel like, too, that's the piece of the self-advocating, right? Remembering that you are worthy of the time that you are putting into these projects and that the clients that are meant to work with you will respect that and understand that. And you don't need to define or tie your worth to how many projects you get done or, how much money you bring in. And I recognize for some women listening that may not always be feasible, right? It may be that, financial means are, required to put food on the table. And, we don't always have that flexibility. But I do think that there's a level of awareness that should be shed on not needing to take on every client and being able to discern that that's not in our highest to do that. And it may not always be the highest for our clients either, right? If we're exhausted.
Yeah. And if you're working to the max that you can and you feel like you're not financially making money, you should probably raise your prices. I think, you really need to advocate for yourself in your own business, and that, if you are in that high of a demand that you're working yourself to the bone and you still aren't getting the financial aspect, you probably should really self-reflect, advocate, get the confidence, and raise your prices. Because then you can work a little bit less. I feel like women, especially, it's hard to know your worth. I just feel like we live in a society that it's very hard to put a price on what you're worth. And so that also is, you got to be an advocate for yourself in your own business.
Yes. I mean, it sounds so simple, right? When you say it, it's like taking a look at and taking stock in what your situation looks like. And perhaps we're not standing up for ourselves in the way that we should, or we're not, asking for prices that we are worthy of and that this business is worthy of. So I love that reminder. So thank you for sharing that, because I bet you that there's somebody listening who needed to hear that. So as we wrap up, we're going to wrap up a little bit. I would love to give you just an opportunity to highlight where our listeners can find you if they're interested in working with you from a design perspective, just engaging with you. Where can we find you and have that discussion?
I am Agate Mountain Studio on Instagram, and my portfolio website and other ways you can find me are agatemountainstudio.com.
Amazing. And I know you mentioned only taking on one client at a time. So are you currently open to new clients right now for your design business, or is there a wait list? What does that look like?
Nope, I'm actually currently open. So if this resonated with you, please reach out. I would love to chat about your business, see how I can help you and help empower you so that you can market your business authentically.
Amazing. Hillary, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability and kind of sharing different parts of your journey with us and kind of how you've started to advocate for yourself. So I will link everything in our show notes that we talked about, your website and your social media pages, so that somebody who this does resonate with, I'm so hopeful that there's women out there who are looking for a supportive and empowering partner in this field can reach you. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for asking me. It was lovely.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please help us out and leave a review wherever you listen, and consider sharing with your friends. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the project or want to share your story, please visit our website linked in our show notes below.